This is the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 9 of the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. I'm joined by the head basketball recruiting analyst for Hoosier Illustrated, Kyler Staley. I'm Drew Rosenberg, as always. Kyler, how are you? Basketball season's here.
It's here. Like I was saying before we recorded, I don't think I was prepared for it when I should have been. There's always just a lot of moving parts. Today we're recording on Monday, so tomorrow Indiana plays their first official game and everything, but just a big college basketball slate tonight. Was watching a little bit before I hopped on here with that, but it's here and it's about to get really, really busy and everything. But this is the best time of the year. I love it because you've got college basketball, you've got football still going on right now, that overlapping. The NBA has been really fun this year, I've thought. So just a great time of the year. The weather, I love the weather, fall and everything. So just excited for the season to start.
Yeah, someone asked me today what my favorite month is, and I had to think about it. And there was like a huge poll. I ended up going to November. I mean, I'm biased. No, my birthday is in November, but that wasn't my reasoning. It was what other month, I guess, do you have football, college basketball, NBA? I know like December, but like November, the weather's still a little nice. Got the fall, especially in Bloomington, got some really nice colors. It's a good vibe.
Yeah, for sure, and especially we had great weather over the weekend for the IU football game and everything too. So Hoosiers got a big win there. Their season's still alive, so we'll see. They got a chance here. Just it's all about taking care of the opportunity here. But Indiana football's still alive, so we'll see how far they can go.
Yeah, if you told me that 2 or 3 weeks ago that they would still have a chance to make a bowl game today, I would tell you you're crazy. But I guess you have 3 winnable games at the end. It's definitely possible. I mean, we can talk Indiana football, but we're not here to do that. It's basketball season. We are finally here. I don't know about you, Kyle. I've been waiting so long. I mean, we have games today. I mean, later tonight. I mean, it'll be over by the time this is out, but Kansas State versus USC is going to be a really good game. I'm excited to watch. Like, it's the best time of the year.
It is, and there's some good games. You get to see Kentucky later. They play today. Purdue plays tonight. It'll be over by the time we get done recording or whatever. But my Sycamores, Indiana State, they're in action today, so I'm excited to watch them. I think they're a very hidden team this year. I think they're going to do some damage in the Valley, so I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, it's just been a long, from an Indiana's perspective, it's been a long off season. A lot of moving parts, new additions, transfers, graduations, and everything. I think the Indiana fans are just excited that it's finally here. You get to see what this new look Indiana team is, with real competition. They've had 2 exhibition games last week, but obviously you can take those with a grain of salt. That's just kind of they want to get their feet a little wet, get the butterflies out and everything, and just figure out what they got and what lineups work and what don't work. But I think this Indiana fan base is ready to see this Indiana team. From what we've seen in the exhibition games, there's been some flashes of the potential, the upside that they have, and there's still a lot of kinks that they need to work out. So I just think overall it's just exciting that Indiana basketball is finally here.
Yeah, I mean, it's here. It's here tomorrow. I guess it'll be today when this comes out. I mean, Indiana's home opener for the Gulf Coast, Dunk City. I mean, it's fun. We'll both be there. Yeah, we'll both. I mean, 10 years ago. That's someone told me that today. We were watching in class today. We were watching the Dunk City highlights, just like talking about it. Because
who was it that they played against when that happened?
Georgetown.
Okay, yeah, man. I remember exactly where I was at. I was at my grandparents' house watching that game. Man, they just took the world by storm. But I feel like they dropped off the map a little bit.
Yeah.
Lately, but they've got a good coach, Pat Chambers, former Penn State coach, who's had history with Indiana, who's beaten Indiana 3 times, including 1 time in Bloomington. So, I mean, they're going to be coached up pretty well. So it's definitely not a team that you can look over if you're Indiana.
Yeah. I guess. Well, I guess we should just jump into the season. This is, I mean, obviously you guys saw the title. This is a season preview. We'll start with Indiana and then we'll move to kind of more Big Ten, more national. So my first question I'm going to ask you, Kyler, who is your X factor heading into this season, or who are your X factors?
Right. It is kind of hard because like I said, there's a lot of new additions to this team. In years past, you'd be like, oh, the X factor is Trace Jackson Davis or whatever. It's an easy answer. But I think this year it's a combination of two, and it's the two guys that you're looking to replace the production of Trace Jackson Davis. I'm going to go with my X factors. It's a tie between Khalil Ware and Malik Renew. Those guys have a lot of pressure on them, especially Khalil Ware coming in. He has a lot of pressure personally because he wants to prove to these NBA scouts that he can go and he can play at the next level. Malik Renew has a lot of pressure in, as when Trace was hurt or whatever, didn't play or whatever, he was the guy that you looked at. You're like, you got to be the guy that's going to provide all that production. You got to step up. It was kind of a rocky freshman year. I mean, I think for the most part, Malik had a really good freshman year, but stayed on the floor, foul trouble, things like that. That's the stuff that he's got to try to avoid this year. But with Khalil and Malik both, we saw in the exhibition games, especially the last exhibition game versus Marion, just the versatility that they have. Both of them can step out for threes. They play inside out. They play pretty well with one another, I believe. So, to me, I think Indiana is going to really rely on those guys. Those guys are going to have to, protect the rim. They're going to have to rebound. They're going to have to stay on the floor. And then they're just going to continue to show their versatility and make things hard for the opposing bigs that are going to guard them. A lot of times you're going to see bigs on the other team. They're going to struggle a little bit because I think both Malik and Khalil are going to switch it up, and they're going to take them out to the perimeter or whatever. So, to me, I think those guys are the X factor this year. I think Indiana could go as far as they go.
Yeah, I went another direction. Both of these guys have the potential to lead this team in scoring. If you said either of them did it, or if they were the two leading, you wouldn't surprise me. These guys, their ceilings are so high right now. But I went for more of a role player, I guess, within CJ Gunn. I think CJ Gunn had a tough freshman year. I'll just say it. He shot 8% from three. And for a guy who came in as a shooter, that's awful. But you could always tell you saw its confidence. And it just, in the first exhibition games, he's shooting the ball with confidence. Yeah, it wasn't falling, but he was still making his effect on the game. That 2-dribble pull-up off the three-point line was really effective. But even if he's not able to score the ball, which CJ Gunn can score the ball, I'm going to say that right now, but I don't even want to talk about his offense for him being an X factor. It's his defense. He's 6'6", he's long, he's put on about 15 pounds. He's said he hit 200 pounds, which was a goal for him. He's getting bigger. He's still a sophomore, he's young, but he's a guy who can come in and defend at a high level. He's going to, when Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway go to the bench, he's going to be a guy that's going to be tasked with guarding some of the best offensive players in the Big Ten because of his length and ability to slide his feet. And I think he's going to find himself having a chance to play on often. He's going to be on the floor often. We saw it in the exhibitions. He was the first guy off the bench in both games. And he's going to have a role just because of his defense. And if he's able to step up and hit threes, he is a guy that has potential to shoot the ball at a high 30s, low 40% from three. Even if he doesn't, he's going to have a role just off of his defense. But his offensive ceiling is why he is such an X factor that he could elevate the ceiling of this team.
Right. Yeah. CJ, that's a good pick. It's a sneaky pick. I really like that one. But CJ, he just oozes confidence, right? There's a certain amount of swagger that when he comes into the game, he just has. He's real fun to watch and everything. And I don't think CJ's met a shot that he doesn't like or whatever, that's just his game. That's his mentality. And I think that's why Woodson likes him. He's got that, dare I say, he's got that dog mentality on the defensive end now. Just last year he did struggle on the defensive end, but he was also a freshman and, wasn't used to the college game, didn't really get consistent minutes, due to where he's at. But, Mike Woodson said it plenty of times. He needs to rely on CJ Gunn and he's going to have to rely on Caleb Banks as well. You always got to pair those two together, it seems like. They're going to be big. They're going to be big pieces off the bench. They're going to be part of that second unit. It's going to be crucial for CJ and Gabe Cupps. Those two will likely always be the first two guards off the bench for Indiana, and you're gonna have to give Xavier Johnson and Trey Galloway. They're going to have to give those guys breaks. But CJ Gunn got a lot of upside, just a tremendous amount of upside. He's going to play hard. He's going to have a great motor. In any time that he's in, he's going to make the highlight plays, and he's going to shoot the ball when he feels comfortable. And CJ always feels comfortable with that ball in his hands. So I think Indiana fans should be really, really excited for CJ Gunn. I think Indiana fans should be really excited for the sophomore class just in general. With Banks and Renew and those guys, just a lot of upside with them. They're going to have to take major leaps as sophomores. They come in, even though they're only sophomores, they're kind of leaders in some aspects. So I really like that pick with CJ Gunn. And I think that's a sneaky one.
Yeah, so I guess from there, I mean, we talked the X factor. Who's your MVP in this team? I mean, they might not win Big Ten Player of the Year, but like, who is going to be the guy that I guess leads this team, the MVP? However, you want to determine the most valuable player for Indiana.
I think the most valuable player, and I don't even know if it's a question. I know you probably have a different answer, but I'm going to go with Xavier Johnson. You know what they say, that he's the head of the snake for a reason. He is the point guard. He's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to be the one making the plays. So I think Xavier Johnson's out to prove a lot of things. One, being healthy enough, which he hasn't shown any signs of not being healthy. In the exhibition games, he's still extremely fast. His court vision's still rock solid, and he's making plays left and right. He's not going to be the leading scorer. He's a guy that can get you a bucket when he needs to, but he's going to set up, all the versatility, all the guys around him, all the playmakers around him, which Indiana has loads of playmakers this year. A lot of options that they can do on the offensive end. Xavier Johnson is going to be reliable for setting those guys up and being a leader. And that's what Mike Woodson wants him to be, is be a leader. And then on the defensive end, he's probably going to be Indiana's best defender, just all around, especially when it comes on the ball. He's going to guard probably the best player, depending on the matchup, the size or whatever. The best guard, the best perimeter player, as you could say. So I think Xavier Johnson's got a lot to prove. I don't think the preseason selections have been too kind for him, especially when it comes to a national point guard role, or even, an all Big Ten team or whatever. I think Xavier Johnson's got a lot to prove. This is last year in college. He wants to go out with a bang or whatever. It's cool to see old X, back, and it's cool to see a mature X. Remember like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, Xavier Johnson is just up and down. It was getting used to the Big Ten style, getting used to the Indiana fan base or whatever. But Xavier Johnson has a lot of maturity. He's the leader of this team. And I think he's going to be the MVP. I think Indiana goes as he goes. I know it's with Khalil and Malik, but I think it's true with X. I think as long as X has got his head straight, in games or whatever, and he's defending and he's making plays, I think Indiana could be a really, really dangerous team.
Well, I don't have X as my MVP. I completely agree with all of your points. I mean, he is a guy that's he might not always create shots for himself, but he's going to create shots for everyone around him. His ball pressure, you talked about his defense. That's something Indiana missed a lot last year. Him pressuring the ball at half court. And Hood-Schifino was not a bad defender. I'm not saying he is, but he just wasn't an Xavier Johnson when it came to the ball pressure up top. And like making ball handlers really have to work to get into their offense. And that's something that like kind of goes under the radar with his game. He makes teams work to get into an offensive set, which is not something like that's just normal. I guess like teams usually are able to just bring it up carefree. But when Xavier Johnson's picking you up 75 feet away from the basket with his speed and his hands, it's tough. And he makes point guards really work on that end of the floor for them, which is not something they want to do.
Right. Yeah. He's the head of the snake for a reason, right?
Yeah. But with that, my MVP is the freshman Mackenzie McBacco. I mean, there's been so much made about this guy. He's most people's pick to win Big Ten Freshman of the Year. He has so much talent, and he really showed it in the Marion game. I think he had 14 or 15 points and a couple threes. And I just think with McBacco, even as a freshman, the worst case scenario is his smooth jumper translates and he uses his length well at the defensive end. Yeah, he's going to have some issues on that end. Woodson is not an easy guy to play defense for. It's hard. People have said that transition on that side of the court is hard, and people struggle to adjust. And McBacco might have that issue, but his offensive ability is so high that he really has the potential to be a 15, 16 point per game scorer really early on in his college basketball career. And I don't want to say shocked, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is only here for one season after this year. So, I mean, he's just such a talented player. I mean, you can see it. The jump shot is so pretty, and that's something Indiana really like. They've had Miller Kopp who could shoot the ball but couldn't really do much of anything else on that side. Baco can do a little more. He can drive to the lane. He's not the most athletic guy, but he has some good length and size for his position that it like allows him to get his shot off in space and when he doesn't have space.
Yeah, for sure. And your pick is, it's a pretty good pick as well, because even though he's a freshman, he's a highly talented freshman. He's a 5-star freshman, McDonald's All-American. Those guys they're not just freshmen. They're coming in, they're college ready. They might as well be sophomore, juniors in college at this point. And that's what Mackenzie Mbako is. Him and Jalen Hood-Schifino, very, very similar, like not playing style ways, but just the feel and how they approach the game. Just the presence that they have on there. In the 2 exhibition games, I feel like we have seen Mackenzie and Baca. I feel like it has taken him a little bit of time to adjust on the floor a little bit, even though you're playing a lesser opponent in UND and Marion. The same with Khalil Ware, I would say as well. It takes those guys a little bit to get to adjusted to it or whatever, and figuring out their spots for what they need to do. But Mackenzie and Baco could very easily be the leading scorer for this Indiana team this year. I truly believe that. And that corner 3, that perimeter game that he has is just money, and it's rock solid. And there's going to be a lot of games, playing through him. And I think, if it comes down to Indiana needs a bucket, I think a lot of times you're going to be looking at Mbako as a first option with that. But, as long as he gets adjusted, it's going to take him some time to get used to the college game. And luckily, these next 3 games, you're not playing the elite opponents, but you're playing opponents that are at the D1 level, and you're going to get their best out of them. And I think that's going to be really good for Mackenzie. And like Michael Woodson said, it's just all about speeding him up and getting him ready on the defensive end. Because I think there is some potential there, with his size, with his length, his versatility, what he can do. I think Mbako could end up being a really, really underrated defender as a guy that can guard both the post and the perimeter.
Mm-hmm.
But there's high expectations for this freshman player. So I think that's a good pick. It wouldn't surprise me either or if Xavier Johnson or Mackenzie Mbako is the quote-unquote MVP of this team. Or it could be somebody else. You just never know. There's just a lot of options with this Indiana team. But really good pick.
Yeah, I mean, one more thing about Mbako before we go to our predictions for the team itself. I mean, he's just a guy like CJ Gunn is too, but I'd say more Mbako, but a guy who can just sit and watch for hours, just shoot the ball. It's just so pretty, it looks so easy, and he just makes it look effortless. He's just a guy with a really nice jump shot, and that's just going to translate whether the rest of his game does. We'll see. But his jump shot isn't going to go away.
No, it's not. And I wrote a good article at HoosierIllustrated.com. There's a cheap plug for you, but I wrote a good story, I thought, where one of the I think it was 24/7 Sports, one of the national writers, the directors, or I can't think of who it was exactly, but had a good quote and said, for Mackenzie Mbako to be an impact on the player, he needs to remember how easy he can make the game for himself. And as long as he remembers that and he smartens up a little bit on the floor and he gets adjusted, I think he's going to be a real dangerous weapon for this Indiana team. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to take a little bit for this whole Indiana team to really click and, figure it out. Hey, we're super talented and we can do a lot of things on the floor. But as soon as that clicks and everything, he could very well be the leading scorer and just, the flat out go-to guy for this Indiana team this year.
Yeah. So I guess with that, we should go to our predictions. You know what? I'm going to start with mine first because you've started every time, and I feel like I want to get a little
go ahead. Yeah, be selfish a little bit. I like that.
So Indiana plays 31 regular season games. I had a record prediction. You had one. My more prediction is where they finish in the tournament, but I think they're going to be around middle of the Big Ten pack. Upper tier, though. I have them winning 21 games, finishing 21-10 before Big Ten tournament play. But I think they finish around a 7 seed. I think this team is going to take it some time to adjust. I think they're going to really start to hit their stride in January, February, March, rather than early. This schedule is a gauntlet. Kansas, UConn, potentially Texas, Auburn. Those aren't easy games, and I don't know how many they are going to be able to win of those really tough non-conference games, especially with such a new team. So I think it's going to be an adjustment, and they won't start to hit their stride until late in the year. And with that, you're trying to make up ground, and getting high in the rankings is tough. But realistically, I could see this team. This team has a pretty high ceiling where I could see them as a 3-4 seed, but I could also see them if things really don't go well, they could even miss the tournament. So it'll be really interesting to see where they kind of end up around in January, March, February, where they're playing at that, how they're playing at that time.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic. I feel like I'm always usually the more optimistic guy when it comes to this, but I have them finishing at 23-8, 31 games or whatever. And I have them at a 5 seed. You made some really good points, and they're all points I agree with. This Indiana team, a lot of moving parts. And I've said this before, it's going to take them a while to click. And that could be the reason why they lose a lot of big non-conference games, just because they haven't clicked yet and they don't know, how to win these types of big games or whatever. But the way I look at it is, I think they're going to make the Big Ten adjust to them. I think this is a team. This is not a typical Big Ten team, not in my opinion. It's not the Trace Jackson Davis clog it up in the middle type of team. This is a team that is built for an NCAA tournament run, if that makes sense. I would say they're a Pac-12, they're an SEC type of team. Those are usually the teams that usually do the best in the tournament, just due on their athleticism and their talent alone, paired with obviously really good coaching as well. I think they're going to make the Big Ten adjust to them. And I think that's going to be, a major advantage to them, especially when you've got a guy, the Zach Eady's, those guys are going to have to go out and they're going to have to go out and guard the perimeter. They're going to have to guard a Khalil Ware. They're going to have to guard a guy that can score at all three phases of the game. A Malik Renew, that's going to be difficult for them. And just the fact that they're going to play fast, they're going to play, a lot of in transition. Especially to start off with, they're going to really rely on their turnovers to steal to score type of defense or whatever. That's why I think once you get in the Big Ten, and I'm going to agree with you, I think they're going to hit their stride around January, February. I think they're going to be a real dangerous team, but I think the losses with the non-conference will probably rack up a little bit, and I think you're going to have to rely on winning a lot of games in the Big Ten, which I think when you look at it, I looked at their schedule just a little bit before we started this podcast. I think it's a very favorable schedule for the most part. I don't think it's like the schedule like you saw last year. And even with how tough it was last year, they still finished second in the Big Ten. I think this is very favorable. They've got some really good home games. You only play Michigan State once, and it's at home at the end of the season. So that's pretty big. I can see them splitting with Purdue again. I see them splitting with Purdue. I think Purdue is going to be wanting some revenge, especially at Mackey or whatever. I do expect them to win at least one game at the Empire Classic. Auburn's a toss-up. I don't know much about them, but obviously they're coached really well with Bruce Pearl. They'll definitely be a different team, unlike Indiana's seen. But if I know a Bruce Pearl team, they're going to be a really highly athletic team and a tough team, and I think Indiana would match up pretty well with them. It's all about winning the games you're supposed to win in the non-conference, and then going into the Big Ten and competing and starting to hit your stride. The best teams in the country, I feel like, hit their stride towards the later of the season, around the mid-January mark. Mm-hmm. I think that's what Indiana's going to do. But I just advise, to the Indiana fans, you got to be patient with this team, because I do feel like it is going to take them a while to click and everything. But I feel like their upside is huge. The ceiling is super high for this team. So once they click and once they figure it out, I think Indiana is going to be a real dangerous team. And I think Indiana is going to be that team this year that, whoever is in your pool, whoever you're matched up with in the NCAA tournament, they're going to be a team you don't want to play. And I think that's what Michael Woodson's built.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you don't see them as built like a Big Ten team, and I don't either. I think if you're looking for a style play conference wise, I kind of lean more towards this looks more like an SEC team, I guess.
Yeah,
I'd say they're super long, they're super athletic. They can play out of the post, but this team wants to run. Mike Woodson has said it. If they can get out in transition, we've seen it through exhibition games, which I'm just going to say they don't matter. You're playing D2, D3 teams that aren't good, or not that they're not good. Let me rephrase. That they aren't in the size and the physicality. Look at a Marion team that had two guys above 6'6". Indiana is so long and athletic that it gives them an advantage against these teams. But when they play other teams that are long and athletic, I still think it's going to show, and they're going to try to get out and run in transition. And that's where this team is going to be most dangerous, getting out and run.
Right, for sure. And I think, and going back to my Big Ten I know you said that you expect them to finish kind of the middle of the pack. I think Indiana is a very sneaky, I wouldn't say Big Ten favorite to win, but I think they're a pretty sneaky team to finish in the top four, just because they are going to, cause so many fits. And listen, this will probably be the first taste of the Big Ten changing the way it plays, the way the other Big Ten teams are going to have to play, with the UCLAs, the USCs, the Washingtons, and the Oregons, and all of them coming in. Big Ten teams are going to have to adjust to that type of style. And I think Mike Woodson, being as smart of a coach he is, I think he's just one step ahead there. He's building a team that's going to compete for Big Ten championships, but it's also going to make deep runs in the NCAA tournament. And I think that's what this Indiana team, barring any health issues or anything like that, is everyone can stay healthy, and he has about 9 to 10 guys that he can work with. I think this Indiana team can be very, very dangerous, especially come the last half of the year.
Yeah, I should clarify when I say middle of the Big Ten, I mean I could see this team finishing up high around a 4 or 5 spot, but also like 8, 7, 8. Like I think this is like upper middle. But yeah, I mean this team, it's really going to be interesting to see when they hit their stride. And I guess speaking of the Big Ten, Kyler, who's your Big Ten winner this year?
I gotta go with Michigan's. No, who did I go with? No, I went with Purdue. Sorry, I was reading in my Big Ten Player of the Year. I was looking at that, so there's a little spoiler for you. But I'm gonna go with Purdue. I just feel like they're always Matt Painter always has their team ready to play for the Big Ten titles. That's what they are. It seems like that's what they're focused on every year. I mean, I'm going to say it seems like they have no will. They do not care to have success in the NCAA tournament. They're all about winning Big Ten championships, and they bring back everybody. And they have a few key additions as well. I think the sophomores with Lawyer and Smith, I think those guys will be ready to take a jump. Trey Kaufman, Caleb First, those guys are pretty dangerous. They're pretty versatile as well. And you throw in a Mason Gillis, who's just kind of their glue of that team. And then you got the big fella, you got Zach Edey, and then you got another big fella, I think, as well. So I think they're a tough team. They're going to win a lot of games this year, just like how they will and everything. This is kind of what they have this team built for, is to win the Big Ten championship. And it's just kind of like one of those things where until you're defeated, until proven otherwise, they are the reigning champs for a reason. Especially when you've got pretty much everybody coming back this year, plus, a few key additions. I'm going to go with Purdue on here. It's going to be a fight, I think, for the top. I think there's about a few teams that you could put in there to compete. The Michigan States, Wisconsin's a trendy pick. Maryland,
Illinois.
maybe. So
Illinois is another team I see.
Illinois is a good one. So we'll see with this, but I gotta go with Purdue at this point.
Yeah, so you said my pick. It's Michigan State. I mean, I'm a very big Izzo guy. I think he is one of the best coaches. Well, I don't think you can I don't think that's an opinion. I just think it's a fact. He's one of the best. Yeah. I mean, Tom Izzo knows how to get teams to come together. He has something that he hasn't really had since Cassius Winston. He has experienced guards. AJ Hoggard and Tyson Walker, those are ballers. They might have the best backcourt in the entire country. I was going to say Big Ten, but I don't think that's I don't even think that's big enough. I mean, that backcourt is so talented. They've played together for a while. They also bring back Malik Hall, Jackson Kohler. Xavier Booker's coming in, 5-star freshman, who was before McBacco, the highest rated freshman to come to the Big Ten, but now it's Mackenzie McBacco. This Michigan State team has a good balance of talent, experience, and if we know Tom Izzo, we know that team's going to play fast. They're going to be tough, and with those two guards who are killers, by the way, Tyson Walker, end of games. I don't know if there's a player in the Big Ten I would rather have the ball in his hands. He just knows how to finish games. We've seen it pretty much his whole career. The dude is a killer, and that Michigan State team is going to be very, very good this year.
Right. It won't shock me. Obviously, I think there is 1A, 1B when it comes to favors in the Big Ten. It would not shock me. I think this is the best team that Tom Izzo's had in quite a while and everything. And this is also a team that I feel like could make a deep run in the NCAA tournament as well. So could it be kind of a final, final tour for Tom Izzo as far as, teams or whatever are concerned. So I think he's going to go out with a bang here.
Yeah. So I guess now you kind of highlighted a little bit. Big Ten Player of the Year is the next thing we're going to talk about, and you're going to mention a guy guys I talked about. So let's just start with you. Stay on Michigan State.
So this is kind of a cop-out answer because I'm going to go with two, but pick your poison at this chance. I'm going to go with either Tyson Walker or AJ Hoggard to win the Big Ten Player of the Year. The easy answer would be Zach Edey. He comes back. There's nobody with his size or whatever that can stop him in the paint or whatever. He's going to score a bunch of points, a lot of easy baskets. But I told you this before we started recording. I'm a big believer in, if you have a dominant season like Zach Edey had, usually if you come back, and Oscar Tshiebwe is a perfect example for this. Yeah. If you come back, usually teams have figured you out by now. And I could see easily Zach Edey's numbers go down this year just because I think teams are going to have better game plans for Zach. But I'm going to go with either Tyson Walker or AJ Holgard. I think one of those two are going to be the best guard in the Big Ten without question. They're both experienced. They both can put up points, both rebound, can facilitate or whatever. Just electric players, honestly. So I think they're going to be just rock solid all year. And honestly, it could come down to both of those guys competing for Big Ten Player of the Year. Would not surprise me at all. But I think it's going to be one of those guys. I don't know exactly one I'd pick right now, but I think Tom Izzo's going to he's going to coach them up. He's going to have them ready or whatever. And I think if Michigan State, especially if they win the Big Ten championship, you're probably looking at either Walker or Hogard to win the Big Ten Player of the Year. So easy answer would be Edie, but I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm going the easy answer. I think it's Edie. I mean, he had such a dominant year. When I look at the Big Ten, I just don't know if there's the bigs to really defend him. I just don't see it. I mean, I agree. I think his numbers are going to go down. And I think that's going to say less about him and more about the guys around him. Those guys are going to get better and they're going to demand the ball a little more. But I think after last year, I think I really do see Purdue going on like a dominant run just because they're going to be playing angry. I mean, this is a team that lost to a 16 seed. The last time that happened, Virginia won the national championship the very next season. So make of that what you will, but I think this Purdue team is going to be very good. And Zach Edey is still going to be unstoppable. He's probably going to be better as a player. I don't know if he'll put up the numbers, but he's just going to be so dominant, so big, that's going to be so tough to stop. And I guess with that, go to Wooden Award. I'll go first. I mean, I'm going to say my pick. I'm going to say this. I'm going to give a non-Zach Edey pick because I very easily could see it being Edey. My non-Zach Edey pick is Donovan Clingan from UConn. Dude he's like Zach Edey. He's a massive human being. But he's super talented. Last year, I mean, didn't really play too much just because he was the backup big. But he was still so talented. I mean, he's going to be the guy this year. He's just, really, really good player. Last year in 13 minutes a game, he averaged 7 points, 5.6 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks. Almost 2 blocks a game in 13 minutes of action. That is ridiculous. He is such a good player. Let me pull up his per 40 numbers because that's a better estimate. And per 40 last year, he averaged 21, 17, and 5.5 blocks.
Wow.
And this is a UConn team that, they lost, their best player, but they won the national title last year, and they're going to be very good again. And Indiana fans will get to see Donovan Clingan up close in New York. It's going to be a really fun matchup seeing him go against Klo Ware, but it's going to be very tough for Klo.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a good pick, Zach Edey. I'm not going to go away from what I said. You don't hardly see back-to-back national player of the years, Wooden Award winners. Oscar Tshiebwe is a very, perfect example of that recently, but I'm going to go with Kyle Flabowski. I think that's how you say his last name. I always struggle a little bit, but I'm going to go with the Duke guy. Probably shouldn't even be in college this year. Should probably be in the NBA right now. I think there's a lot of hype with him this year. And rightfully so. He comes in. He was the leading scorer last year. I think the leading rebounder as well for Duke. And he comes back, and he's just going to be, he's going to be older. He's going to be a little bit more mature than what he is. And I think he's going to put up some insane numbers this year. I think he'll easily average a double-double for Duke this year. I think Duke's going to be a trendy team this year. I think they're going to be one that's, probably going to be, compete for national championships, and rightfully so. They're probably going to be the Duke of old this year. What we were used to seeing under the Coach K era. But yeah, I really like the guy's game. I think he's my kind of pick right now to win the Wooden Award. So would not shock me if Edey won it. Would not shock me if somebody else won it besides those two. But I really like Flabowski. I really like his game or whatever. So I think he's going to put up some big numbers for Duke.
Yeah, and I guess the last national thing we have to talk about is Final Four and your winner. Who is your Final Four, and who do you have winning it all, Kyler?
So I think this is the year we finally get a Big Ten team, and I think it's going to be Michigan State. I think they're going to be built for an NCAA tournament run. I'm going to go with Michigan State. That was my Final Four. I'm not going to go with them winning it, but I'm going to put Michigan State in the Final Four. I'm also going to put Kansas. I think they're just from top to bottom. That's a good team, and they're going to be coached really well. They very likely could be the number one team in the nation all season long. But I'm going to go with Michigan State, Kansas. I really like Tennessee. They seem like they're a trendy pick right now. I think Rick Barnes is due. They have a really good returning group, and they got some players that they brought in as well. So very, very talented team. And then I think my fourth Final Four team, I'm going to go with North Carolina. Now, that might sound a little crazy to a lot of people, but I think, you want to call it whatever. I think the bad juju is out of that locker room right now. I think North Carolina is going to get back to being the team that we're used to seeing. Armando Bacot, another guy that could win probably Player of the Year. He'll definitely be fighting for that all season long. Arguably the best big in the nation. So I think North Carolina will play through them. And I think North Carolina will be a team that I could see winning the ACC this year. But those are my Final Four. A lot of blue bloods right there, but that's just who I got right now on paper.
Yeah, so my first Final Four team is Duke. I mean, you mentioned it. I am so high on Filipowski. I think he is such a talented player. I think John Shire's first year was kind of an adjustment, and they really started to play a lot better down the stretch. And I think they're just going to build off that, bringing a lot of talent back. I just think they're going to be really, really good. And Shire's going to prove why he was the heir to Coach K. My next one is similar to you, was Michigan State. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. I've said enough about them, but experienced guards do so much. And speaking of experienced guards, that leads me right to my next team. It's Houston. Kelvin Sampson's kind of disappointed in the tournament over the last couple of years with the talent he's had. I think Jamal Shead is one of the best returning guards in the country, and his backcourt mate, LJ Cryer from Baylor, is a baller. LJ Cryer can hoop. He is such a good player. When I said Michigan State has arguably the best backcourt in the country, it's probably them in Houston. I'm definitely missing someone else. USC, another team with Collier and Boogie Ellis you could throw in there, but that backcourt is experienced, and they are talented with Shed and Cryer. And then my final team is Arkansas. I mean, that is a team. Musselman just peaks in March. He has a long athletic team like he does every year. Trayvon Brazile back, Khalif Battle. Why am I blanking right now? Devontae Davis, an 11-point per game scorer for them last year. They were bringing back a decent amount of talent. Yeah, they lost some guys, Ricky Council, Anthony Black, Nick Smith, but they're bringing back enough talent to really make up for the loss. And Musselman gets his guys ready for March. Even with a tough year last year, battling injuries, they still made a run to the Sweet 16. It's going to be a good team, and my winner is Michigan State. For all the reasons you said, the experienced guards, Izzo, I don't need to go into it more. I mean, I've talked about them so much already. I'm so high on this Michigan State team. And I think Xavier Booker might have a tough start to his freshman year, but he is going to be so good. And we didn't say his name yet, but I'm going to have to mention it. Jackson Kohler, another guy, but Jeremy Fears off the bench, another highly touted freshman. If he goes anywhere but Michigan State or maybe a couple other schools, he's probably starting. And him coming off the bench, yeah, he probably won't have that same opportunity, but he could be a huge factor down the stretch for that team.
For sure. And I agree with you with Xavier Booker. As a guy that watched Xavier Booker quite a bit over the past few years, he's going to have an adjustment period for sure in the Big Ten. He's going to be playing some guys that he normally has not played before. I think Tom Izzo will get him ready. I think he's going to provide a lot of versatility for Michigan State. But I didn't mention my champion. I'm going to go with Kansas. They come in for a reason, the number one team. I think Hunter Dickinson was the missing piece for them. With them, plus the coaching of Bill Self. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the nation, one of the best coaches of all time right now. So I think he's going to have those guys ready, and I just think on paper, from top to bottom, I think they are the best team right now. But the best thing about college basketball is all these predictions that we have are probably all going to be wrong. So that's what makes college basketball just awesome, just the best sport there is. So.
Look at last year. North Carolina was the number one team in the country. They coming off a national championship runner-up. They brought back everyone, and they missed the tournament completely. That's why college basketball is so much fun. You just never know.
Yeah, you can't predict it. You just got to enjoy it. So it's madness. It's madness every single month of the season.
Yeah, it's not just March. Yeah, I guess, tomorrow IU plays Florida Gulf Coast. You and I will both be there. Not sure if Alec will be there, but we'll have both of us, as you guys can see our Twitter on our picture. We'll have full coverage. Follow us, follow FRN_Indiana on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And yeah, I guess for all things Indiana, HoosierIllustrated.com. We have football, basketball. Make sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, Spotify. We have press conferences. This podcast, which is weekly, I think we're going to get a date set where we can just do it and I'll have it every single day, once a week on a certain day versus the inconsistency of what day it's coming out. But yeah, we have everything you could ask for. Indiana athletics, Indiana basketball, football, women's basketball, pros. Lot to be excited for, especially with college basketball in Indiana starting tomorrow.
Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited to be at Assembly Hall consistently moving forward. It's the best time of the year for me. I do travel a lot coming down from Fishers to Bloomington a lot, but it makes it worth it just being in Assembly Hall and everything. So it's exciting. This is going to be a fun year, I think, for Indiana fans. It's going to be a fun college basketball season in general. But yeah, go to HoosierIllustrated.com. We got tons of stuff like Drew just mentioned. And we'll have more different content, and even with this podcast, we've been talking behind the scenes. We might start having some guests on as well. Yeah. So it's going to be good. It's going to be, we're going to have a lot of stuff here. So make sure you check all of our stuff out.
Yeah. All right. As always, thank you for tuning in to the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. We'll be back next week.